This is Father Son Galaxy. I am Kerwin. This is Keith. Our guest is Nick Mielke, an avid Star Wars fan and content creator. He is the co-host of Podcasts of the Whills, Around the Galaxy with Pete Fletzer, and Force Connect with Fletzer and Chris Ryons. He is also core organizer of Podathan, an annual event bringing together Star Wars content creators, celebrities, and the community to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Since 2020, Podathon has raised nearly $40,000 for the charity. Nick Mielke, welcome to Father Son Galaxy.
I can't believe it's real. I'm really here. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is our pleasure. This has been a long time coming. Thank you so much. We are so great,
Absolutely.
so happy to have you here.
All right, I'm gonna kick off the first question. Could you tell us a little bit of I can't speak. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in the South and some of your favorite childhood memories?
I definitely can. And it's a little bit of an interesting story. I was actually born in Peoria, Illinois, and lived in Illinois till I was 10 years old. And when I was 10, we moved from Illinois to Selma, Alabama, of all places, which, if anybody has done their history, American history, Selma had a huge role in the civil rights movement. Grew up and went to high school there, and then moved when I went to college to Montgomery, Alabama, the other key part of the civil rights movement. Um, so it was certainly a transition to move from Illinois to Alabama and to have those cultural differences. But at this point, I've lived in Alabama way more than I've lived in Illinois. I still have family there. We still visit. But growing up in the South was certainly an unusual experience. Certainly encountering, some of the problematic and trouble things that you hear about sometimes in the South. That was a part of growing up here, especially coming from a different part of the country, a different culture. But there's amazing food, there's amazing people. I live in a place that is 3 hours from Atlanta, 4 hours from Nashville, 5 hours from Louisiana or New Orleans. We're 3 hours from some of the best beaches in the world. Like it's a neat place to grow up. And it has really been filled with a variety of, unique experiences. Certainly for me, as somebody who loves history, to have the opportunity to grow up around this kind of history and learn so much about what our country went through and is still going through, if we're being honest. But to grow up around it and learn so much about it has really been probably one of my favorite things about growing up in the South, is getting to have kind of a front seat view to really get to learn directly about a lot of this history that our country has gone through.
Yeah, you did mention about Selma and Montgomery. You're right. Those two cities are instrumental in the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to, say personally, I wanted to thank you. And I want to tell you how much I admire you, because back in February, you asked me to be a co-host on Force Connect with Chris
Mm-hmm.
Ryons. And this was in February during Black History Month.
Right.
And you wanted to give us, Chris and I, a forum to talk about our experiences being Star Wars fans,
Mm-hmm.
from our perspective. And
Sure.
that was very touching. I don't know of any other podcaster who would even take a moment, one day out of the month of February to even acknowledge not just us, but you also talked about some of the unsung heroes of African
Mm-hmm.
American unsung heroes that you discuss related to Star Wars. And I just wanted to say thank you for that, because again,
Well,
you know,
it's
yeah, no one would, no podcaster that I know of would ever, who is, non-black would go out of their way and just take a time, an episode to talk about, uh, you know, the African American experience. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you for that.
it's something, and I appreciate that. And you certainly by no means have to thank me for that, because all I did was pull two really awesome people together to say, hey, let's talk about Star Wars. But what it did is, I can't imagine, because I didn't grow up black in the United States. I didn't grow up, in that era. And Star Wars was something that was unique, that still spoke to both of you, despite in the first movie, there's not really a black character. We know James Earl Jones is the voice of Darth Vader, but we get Lando in Empire Strikes Back, and really he's the only black character that we have, for the next couple of movies. And so I was very fascinated to hear, you guys' perspective growing up with Star Wars that way, and not having, we talk so much, certainly in modern culture and modern cinema, we talk about representation and we talk about how important that is. But you guys grew up in an era where that wasn't, a factor. That wasn't something that we heard talked about, but still you were drawn to Star Wars and you were drawn to these stories. And that fascinated me a lot. So I loved getting the opportunity to talk to you guys about that. And there are so many unsung heroes. I think we did a toast to Ashley Boone, who was one of the creators or the PR people who literally is kind of the key behind the publicity that made the first Star Wars successful. And there are so many stories like that that I think are important to be told, because it is the fabric not only of who or what Star Wars is, but it's the fabric of what this country is. And so to see, not only to see that conversation and have that with you guys, but to see you and Keith doing what you're doing, to have Tanya be involved, as y'all are creating another space for people of color to come in and share their stories and talk about their loves of, all kinds of content. Like, what you're doing is really special. And I was honored just to get the opportunity to hang out with you guys, and certainly to call you guys friends even more.
Yeah. And how much of that is due to your upbringing? Because once again, you grew up in Selma, you now currently live in Montgomery, you know about Black history and the civil rights movement. Was that a part of the reason why you wanted to spotlight the contributions given by
I
African?
certainly think it has to be a part of it, because, having not been born here, but I moved here at 10, that's still pretty young. But I moved here at a time when I was able to recognize the differences. And to be perfectly honest, growing up in Selma, Alabama in the late 80s and early 90s, there were still a lot of mean white people who said the same mean things to Black people that they were saying in the 50s and 60s, because it was culture and this is how it's always been. And that never sat with me. That was never something that I could get behind. And so I always had this sense of like, no, that's not how we treat people. My parents certainly instilled that in me. And, growing up and again, going to college in Montgomery, learning the history, it's always been something that I feel like I've been attuned to. Equality overall, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's sexual orientation. Like, we have to treat each other better, and nobody gets to be better or ranked higher or, whatever the deal is. And so that's something that certainly I'm raising my daughters, in that mindset, because, people are people. And in my personal faith, like, God created all of us and he didn't create any of us to be better or more or lesser than somebody else. We're different, and that's what makes us beautiful. But absolutely, growing up in Selma impacted that, seeing certain things in conversations that people, hearing somebody say something one time and going, my God, I can't believe they said that to them. That I would never talk to somebody that way. Like, I feel like I am sensitive and attuned to that. And it's just important. Like I said, there are stories that are important to be told, because your involvement and your connections with Star Wars are just as important as mine are.
Talk about the beauty of living in the South. Like, where were some of your favorite places that you like to go when you were a child, and places that you
Mm-hmm.
go now?
I grew up going camping. I love outdoors. My parents had a pop-up tent camper that they'd pull behind the car, and the top would go up and the sides would come out. But I had my own tent, and like my siblings and my parents would sleep in the camper. But I was like, I'm setting up my tent outside. I've got my own space. I went backpacking a lot in high school. I'm very fortunate that, where we live is in the middle of some of the most beautiful, we've got forests. There are cities, but there's still a lot of land. It's not like, if you're in Philly or New York and you have to drive a little bit to get, out into the country to get, away from stuff. We have a lot more outdoors. We have a lot more nature. We're close to mountains. Like I said, I'm personally not a beach person, but the Gulf Coast of Alabama is in the Gulf of Mexico are some of the most beautiful beaches in the United States. They've got that white sand. So we did a lot of that, and we still do that. My wife and my 4 daughters, we go camping. We all go tent camping together. We have a big 10-person tent, and mom gets an air mattress and, all the comforts that she needs to be comfortable camping. But I love being outside, and it helps me connect to, being able to be peaceful, being able to be still, to calm down in the midst of the busyness of work and parenting and all the things that I have going on. But outdoors has always been something that I've always been drawn to.
What was the first Star Wars movie you saw, and what were your thoughts on the film?
Well, I clearly loved it, because, well, here I am surrounded by all my Star Wars things. I believe my first memory really of seeing Star Wars is I saw Return of the Jedi in 1983 at a drive-in movie theater in Central Illinois. My parents had a big station wagon. There was a drive-in movie theater right outside of town where we lived. And I was 5 years old at the time. And I remember it was huge, and this, the lasers and the sounds, even on, and Keith, you won't know this, but at the drive-in theater, they had these little tiny metal boxes that you clip to your window, and the sound was not good quality, but that's where you got your sound from. And it still just consumed me and swallowed me whole. And then the other part of it was seeing, I think my dad had recorded on beta tapes off of HBO the first two Star Wars movies, and we just absolutely wore those tapes out and watched them every chance we got. So not Empire, Return of the Jedi was definitely the first one I remember seeing, but those other ones came right in there behind it because we were watching them at home, and it just grabbed me. It was adventure, it was excitement, it was unlike anything else I had experienced. I had grown up, my grandfather watched Westerns, my dad watched a lot of old, war movies, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, that kind of stuff. So I was familiar with all of that, but this was outer space, which was even better, and that kind of fueled me to growing up being obsessed with our space program and reading everything I could about it and wanting to be an astronaut, and had the chance to go to space camp when I was in 6th grade. And I was very disappointed to learn that the space shuttle did not take off like it did in Space Camp, the movie, when all those kids accidentally got launched into space. That was a little bit of a letdown, but I survived.
Yeah. Did you have friends that were Star Wars fans just like you, and did you get together and talk about the film
really
and characters,
didn't.
or was it something that you just kept to yourself?
I really didn't. My dad was a sci-fi and Star Wars fan. Like, he grew up and he watched a lot of Star Trek, which was a big thing that I watched a lot of original Star Trek growing up in the movies and saw that stuff with him. But he also introduced me to Star Wars. So it was kind of an individual obsession. Like, I would play Star Wars when I had the toys, and I had younger siblings, and I would kind of try to make them play with me, but they didn't really get it. So I'd get frustrated and say, never mind, just forget it. So it really was kind of my own thing, honestly, probably until I got into college, if I'm being honest. Like, because I went through that time, and we talk about this all the time. We use the phrase the dark times, but after, Return of the Jedi ended, we had that long period. I read the extended universe or expanded universe novels, got really into those. Like, that was a way for me to continue Star Wars. I didn't really do the comic books. But when I got to college, halfway through college was when Phantom Menace came out, and it was such a big deal that was when I started to find people that I was friends with in college that previously we had never spoken about a Star Wars, but we were like, holy crap, this movie's coming out. I think I'm gonna go see it. You too? Let's go together. Like, it gave us a reason to both share, an interest or a like in something. And then becoming a grown up or quote unquote grown up, I don't know if I still am yet, working on that. Being able to, follow that passion, reconnect with it. Really, it started, I've always loved it. I've always been connected to it. But of course, when the sequel trilogy movies came back out, that reignited another excitement. And then I had the chance to go to Celebration in 2017 in Orlando with a good buddy of mine. And that just kind of opened up my eyes to this whole, other big world of like, oh, there's people that love this stuff as much as I do, but I haven't really connected with them, because even in that early 2017 mode, like, we had social media, we had Twitter, we had all those things, but like, I hadn't found my way just then into the Star Wars corner of all of that, for both the goods and the bads that you can find in there sometimes.
And what led you to become a podcaster?
Part of it was going to Celebration in 2017 in Orlando, but also, and I've said this a few times, but part of my story is growing up as a kid. One of the million things I wanted to be. I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I wanted to be Han Solo. I wanted to be an astronaut. I also really wanted to be a radio DJ. And as a kid, I had a Fisher-Price tape player and had a Fisher-Price record player. And I would play records on my record player, and I would record the DJ bits on my tape player, and then play it back and listen to it, like making my own little homemade radio shows. So 2017 rolls around. I have this great experience going to Celebration, came back and talked to a friend of mine who we'd known each other for years, but had kind of connected over Star Wars. And basically we're like, let's try and make a podcast. Like, podcasting certainly existed. It wasn't new at that point, but it was not even to the level that it is now. And so we decided, let's give it a shot. And we decided we were going to talk about Star Wars and this and that. And I always say, his wife overheard us talking about it. We were at a Christmas party. And she said, who do you think's going to listen to this? And our exact answer was, we don't really care. It just gives us a chance to an excuse to talk about Star Wars, the two of us together. If nobody listens, great, because we still got to hang out and talk about Star Wars. So it started from there. We modeled it on, there was a podcast called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. And so basically their idea was they took all of the Harry Potter novels and they treated it like it was the Bible. So they would do essentially Bible studies for each episode, but instead of using the Bible, they used Harry Potter as their sacred text, and they would pull out what are the lessons and what does it mean and how do we draw inspiration and that kind of stuff. And so my friend that I started the podcast with, he was a Methodist pastor. And so we thought, let's do a Star Wars version of that. So we came up with Podcast of the Whills. And as a little nod to them, we always say it's the podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. So we did our version of that for a while. In the old days of podcasting, like we did it over, it wasn't even over Zoom, it was over Skype. And we had to we lived in different places and we had to coordinate our schedules. And we had to do the old school recording thing of we both had to count down so that we had a place when we sent the audio to one another to combine it together. There was a matching marker it was not nearly as easy as it is now. But we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of episodes where we took the movies and broke them down into parts and kind of dug into them for inspiration. We also did very typical podcast things like taking a 2-minute movie trailer and talking about it for 2.5 hours because that's what nerds do. And then as life happened and things got going, it got harder and harder for us to connect and record and make episodes. And then when the pandemic hit, I was home, and through some situations with work, I was not working for that first year of pandemic and was kind of looking for something to do. And he said, look, if you want to keep going, you're welcome to keep going. So I kind of ran with it. And I started the live Sunday night podcast of the Whills, me by myself, a live chat, a guest when I could get them, and really love the opportunity to connect with the guests in the live chat. It adds so much to the show. It gives me the opportunity to kind of respond to people. But just, from there, it picked up a little bit of speed, and I had some really great opportunities to get some fun guests. I pretty early on got Christina Ariel on, got the guys from Star Wars Minute, got a good friend of mine, Maury Sterling, who was in the TV show Homeland for a bunch of years, is also a Star Wars voice actor who did Knights of the Old Republic. Just was able to land some people. And I kept joking. I was like, I'm the smallest podcast with the best guest list of people coming in. And that kind of expanded out. And from there, I met Pete, and he and I have partnered up, and I've met Chris, and I've made all these friends. And so to start with a Fisher-Price record player and a tape player in the 80s to end up where I am now with all these tools and the ability to essentially put on a podcast or a TV show, even from the corner of my garage anytime I want to. But it brought me so much family. I got to go to Celebration in Anaheim the year before last, and I wasn't sure when I went if I was going to be able to get into the show or not. I didn't have a ticket because I wasn't initially thinking it all just fell into place. But I even told my wife, who doesn't understand any of this at all, I said, even if I don't get to go to the convention, if I get to go and meet all of these people in person for the first time and hug their necks and have a beer and sit on the back patio of a hotel and just go, look at us, we made it. We're here. We get to, exist. That would have been worth every bit of it. But I got to go to the show too. So that was pretty rad.
Yeah. I agree with you as far as the podcasting that we do. I was very against getting into, creating our own podcast because I thought I really needed training. I need to go to communication school, broadcasting school before I can actually think about hosting a podcast. But, thanks to Tanya, she changed my mind. And it does bring you into a different type of community because my experience with Star Wars is, outside of two of my buddies that I grew up with, and we went and watched some Star Wars films, I didn't really have anyone else to talk Star Wars with until Keith came along. But now, after starting this podcast, it's introduced me to so many people like you and Pete and
Mm-hmm.
Chris. It's very exciting. I mean, I have never been this excited about Star Wars since I was a teenager, and
Right.
you got someone like Chris who's into the comic books, and Keith is into the Clone Wars. There's just so much Star Wars now that you can talk about,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much of it that you can just communicate and sit down and chat for hours about it, which is
That's
wonderful.
right.
And the most important thing is actually going out to the conventions now or the
Mm-hmm.
expos that we've been doing the last couple of years. And it's a lot of fun. And I just didn't see myself being one of these people on the stage, you know, giving a presentation. That
Yeah.
wasn't me. I never thought that would be me, but I'm having a great time, doing it. What about
It's
you?
it's one of those things that's it's so special and it's so unique, and I'm so thankful that I get to do it with people like Pete and Chris, people like you, because I'm in the same boat. Like, I wasn't trained for this. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for my entire career. So, like, I've done a bunch of public speaking. I love public speaking. It's ironic because when I was in high school, I was terrified of it. And if you told me I would do it for a job and love it, I'd have laughed in your face. But I love communicating. I love speaking, but I also love learning and improving and trying to get better at it. Like Pete and I joke all the time. The only person I talk to more than my wife is Pete Fletzer. And we talk nonstop throughout the day. We text, what if we try this? What if we did? Like, we always want to improve, even to where we give each other feedback and critique. Hey, why don't you try doing a little bit of this? Or why don't I, because I want to grow and I want to get better, because I want to be able to share the fun and the stories that I've encountered with other people. It's not an ego thing. I just love talking about Star Wars. And if I can, connect with folks and share conversations. And again, to watch you guys is totally inspiring. Keith, you're a natural, man. Like, every time y'all are doing shows and y'all get these amazing interviews and you get to interview the cast of, Andor and all these other things, like, you light it up every time. And it's so impressive. And I hope that your experience is, maybe mirrors your dad, but maybe a little less, uncertain about it, because you seem to have the confidence to rock it out.
So I want to talk about the SSW network. So right
Mm-hmm.
now, correct me if I'm wrong. So you have the SSW network, and under this umbrella, you have
Mm-hmm.
Around the Galaxy,
Yeah.
Podcast of the Whills, and Force Connect. Can you walk
Mm-hmm.
us through each one? And you talked a little bit about Podcast of the Whills.
Yeah.
What was the reason for bringing these three podcast channels together under
Mm-hmm.
the network?
Sure. Well, and a lot of it, again, I'm going to mention Pete a bunch throughout this interview because he's become one of my best friends. He's my partner in all of this. But he was one of the earlier podcasts that I found. Star Wars Minutes, the first Star Wars podcast I ever listened to, takes me all the way back to kind of my beginnings of podcasting and listening to podcasts in general. But when I found Around the Galaxy, like second or third episode, like it was pretty much early in his run, I just loved what he did. It was around the same time that I had started Podcast of the Whills. And so I was constantly blowing him up over DMs, like asking questions and, hey, would you listen to this and tell me what you think? I promise you won't hurt my feelings. And the other thing that he used to do in the early days of the show is he would end it with, if you or someone would make a great guest on Around the Galaxy, send me an email. Well, of course, that was an open invitation. I blew him up all the time. I was like, hey, man, I have a podcast. Let me come talk to you. And I wasn't too pushy about it, but I finally eventually wore him down. And when I got my chance to be on Around the Galaxy, like, it was the biggest deal to me. I was like, holy cow, I've made it. It's how I feel now. I've made it being on with you guys. But through that, getting to have the chance to have those conversations, we just became really good friends. And what we started to realize, especially as I transitioned into taking over Podcast of the Whills full time by myself, I still did some of the deep dive, the study episodes, but I really love doing the interviews. I really love doing the long form, get a guest on. That was a key part of our Sunday night, what I did. And the more Pete and I talked, we realized we kind of do the same show, but just with little tweaks and little things that are different. And so it's actually coming up on 2 years. We just talked about this the other day. We decided 2 years ago that we should partner up and initially it was let's combine and, run them out of the same channel and kind of start a little network. And then from there it became, Around the Galaxy and Podcast of the Whills are so similar. Let's co-host Around the Galaxy together. And so what we've kind of done is we've molded this version of Around the Galaxy as our long form interview show. We have all these amazing guests. We get to talk to them for 45 minutes to an hour. And we always say we want Around the Galaxy to be what happens if two Star Wars fans meet for the first time and just have a drink and a conversation. If you run into somebody at a club or a bar or a restaurant, he sees your Star Wars shirt and he's like, "Hey, I love that shirt. Do you like Star Wars?" "Oh, I do." "What do you love about?" And 45 minutes later, you're like, "Look at all these things we've talked about." So Around the Galaxy is that long form interview show. Force Connect is our live Friday night. We have a live chat. We jokingly call it sports talk radio, but for Star Wars, we very regularly throw the link in the chat. We let our viewers call in, comment on the topic of the night. Usually some of them get a little off the rails. A little bit of silliness sometimes on a Friday night, but it's our kind of loosey goosey hangout, have fun on a Friday night show, which kind of goes back to during the pandemic when we were doing a lot of those kind of shows because everybody was stuck at home. And it felt like the opportunity to go out on a Friday night and have a drink with a friend that none of us got to have. So we all got together and did it online. So that spirit has kind of, persisted with just Friday night fun, hanging out live. And so what that has done for Podcast of the Whills is what I call the network deep dive show. If there's something that I really want to get granular on, if I want to take a bunch of extra time and dig into something, that's what we're using Podcast of the Whills for. It hasn't gone away. It's just not as regular because it's kind of more of a special event. I did one this summer in June when Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny came out, because the other thing I love as much as Star Wars is Indiana Jones. And so I was able to get Holly Fry and Brandon Winerdy and our good friend Raven on, and the four of us nerded out about Indiana Jones for 2 hours. And, that's kind of the mold or the role that Podcast of the Whills has taken over. So we have 3 kind of distinct shows under one umbrella in what we call the SSW network.
So we had a lot of Star Wars in 2023. What was your favorite project of this year?
Gosh, that's such a tough question because, here I am, pick your favorite child. I have to say, Ahsoka was phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed Ahsoka. It's hard not to say Andor 2. And so if you're forcing me to choose, Keith, which I hear you doing, I'm going to say Ahsoka was my favorite of this year. I love Rebels so much. And that's not always usual for a fan of my age because Rebels was not designed for me. I was not the original target audience. I came to it later on after it had been on. But I adore that show. The storytelling in it, the Jedi lore that runs throughout that show is some of my favorite Star Wars storytelling, period. And so to get the reunion of those characters, to get Ahsoka, who is also one of my favorite characters, it was everything. I loved it.
Yeah.
And Dad, what was your favorite?
Well, okay. Well, I want to go back to Rebels. I'm a big fan of Rebels as well. So, not to worry about that. I didn't know.
And I don't want to make anybody jealous, but
Yeah.
I am slated at some time this week. I have never purchased any of the Star Wars lightsaber hilts. I haven't been to Galaxy's Edge. I don't have any of the Legends Black Series, all the different ones. But thanks to a good friend of ours, Brian Fry, I'm going to be receiving in the mail sometime this week the Kanan Jarrus lightsaber hilt from Galaxy's Edge. Because I said a long time ago, if I was ever going to get a lightsaber hilt, that was the one that I wanted. What was that question, Keith?
Can I have it?
That wasn't your question.
I
don't know, man.
Does it have a kyber crystal with it?
I believe so. I'm waiting for it to arrive. Brian was going to make sure I had a blade and send it and hook me up with all the goodies. But
Awesome.
my understanding is that it actually twists and the top comes off the way Kanan used to carry it as one of the functions when it doesn't have the blade in it. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Wow.
So, Dad, what's your favorite project of this year?
Yes.
And it can't be Andor because that was last year.
No, I understand. So 2020, we got a lot of Star Wars. First of all, let's just say that, we're getting spoiled here. But I am a big fan of the Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
I I really enjoyed meeting those characters for the first time when they appeared in season 7 of the Clone Wars. I thought the first season was pretty good. The second
Mhm.
season was great.
Yes.
So I, I honestly think the best storytelling from Star Wars right now is coming from animation.
Mhm.
It's just the collaboration, with the writers and the creative consultants getting together, and they're coming up with these scripts and storylines. It's fantastic. Got a little bit, maybe tired of the mission of the week that the batch
Right.
was going on.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
it
Yeah,
felt like the same plot line. Like, oh, everybody messed up. They're
right.
not getting anything. And now Sid's gonna rant for like 2 minutes about how upset she is. I wonder what'll happen next episode. They're doing the same thing.
Yeah, right. Every time I
Tune in
saw
next
Sid,
week for more of this.
yeah,
Every time you saw Sid, you knew it was gonna be a
yeah, I got
fun
nervous.
time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What mission is this now? But if you get past the missions, think about what happened. We had the batch split up, right? Echo leaving
Mhm.
the group, which was fantastic. I thought it was interesting. And
Whoa!
well, not that
Wait, you're like, Echo's leaving the group? That's fantastic.
no, the storyline of him. I thought it brought tension to the group because after he left, they kind of fell apart, right?
That's bombastic.
They were kind of lost.
And he came back.
They were directional. Well, yes, they didn't know where they were going. I also liked Omega's reaction to
Mhm.
hearing that Echo was leaving. I didn't even know they
Omega was
had that.
crushed.
Yeah, I didn't even know they had that connection together. But it
I
was
had
just
no clue Omega could take that much emotional damage
yeah,
in one hit.
it was like
Yeah.
losing,
It was kind of
a
sad.
friend, losing a family member. She took it
Mhm.
hard, but
Yeah,
they
but
got past that.
you know what's funny?
What's that?
Well, not funny, haha, but like, she's so upset, but he's coming back. He's not dead either.
Well, no,
I mean,
no.
he's still alive. You could literally reach out to him if
Yeah.
you wanted to talk to him.
True,
But
but
it's not like he's going anywhere.
yeah, but it's not the same if that person's not there every single day. She was used to having these guys
Mhm.
Yeah, but
surround her,
you've been on
around her.
business trips, right?
Yeah, but that's just
Yeah, me, Mom, and Maceo still been here, or vice versa. Mom's been on business trips, and you, me, and Maceo were still here. Like, I mean, I'm not like, oh no, she's gone. I, you
all right,
know,
Keith. Okay, all right.
I'm not making fun of Omega. That was quite a reaction.
Well, we didn't know if Echo was coming back, right? So
Right.
that's the difference. So if I'm going on a business trip, I'm going to come back. But when Echo left, she didn't know if she was ever going to see him again. So I can
Yeah.
understand the reaction that she had, and just seeing Tarkin on the screen and
Mhm.
Rampart getting his due,
Oh
and
boy.
yeah, and then we're not going to even go into what happened in the final 2 episodes, but it was
Don't
just
remind
so
me.
dramatic.
Mhm.
It's fantastic, and that twist at the
Yeah.
very end of the finale. I just can't wait to see what happens
Yeah.
in season
I'm
3.
gonna be
Well, and
honest. Emperor Palpatine is just the puppet master.
Of course,
He
yeah,
played Rampart
yeah,
he played Rampart so well you would have thought he was a violin
exactly,
and that sorry. The Palpatine played Rampart so
yeah,
well that you would have thought Rampart was a violin and Palpatine was Yo-Yo Ma.
yeah.
yep,
Very good.
nailed it. Nailed it.
Yes,
Finally
he
I got
did.
my analogy right.
Yes, he
I
did.
like it.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I like it. Well, and I agree with you, especially about Bad Batch, because in the pantheon of all the different things that I've watched, like I like Clone Wars fine, but Clone Wars has never necessarily been like my thing. I've said many times I kind of use Clone Wars as like a reference tool. If I was watching an episode of Rebels and they mentioned something, I'd go back and go, where do I learn about that? Oh, it's this group of episodes of Clone Wars. And so I've seen it all. I've seen it over time, but it was not something that grabbed me as much as Rebels did and compelled me to watch it from beginning to end. But we get to Clone Wars season 7, things are different. The first 4 episodes with Bad Batch, they were fine. They didn't really, do it for me necessarily. The middle set with the Martez sisters, they were fine. Those last 4 with Ahsoka and Maul, that's what, got my engine running, got me excited for the Clone Wars. And so what was so interesting to me, because when Bad Batch came out that first season, I was like, of course I'm going to watch it. I'm a Star Wars fan and a podcaster. Of course I'm going to watch it. But I was so dialed in from the first episode in a way that I wasn't those first 4 episodes of season 7. Like, it grabbed me in a different way. I've been on board for it the whole time. I love, like you said, the relational storytelling in it. As a dad and as a dad of daughters, like, that family, I am so here when she gets her room on the ship and all those little parental moments when they're with Cut and Sue. And there's that whole, thing about being a parent, and these guys that have been mercenaries their whole life are trying to figure out how to deal with a child. Like, there's a lot of power in that storytelling that speaks to me at a place that I'm at in my life as a dad, and as a dad of 4 daughters even.
Do you have a favorite project?
Overruled. What are you looking forward to?
Well, no, wait a minute. No, let's talk about you. Do you want to talk about what was your favorite? In a polite way.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like Tales of the Jedi was very centered around 2 characters. They were good arcs, but there wasn't much else there. I still can't forgive the Bad Batch for how many plot twists and that they set up in the finale.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just completely mind blown still.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves what? Mando season 3 and Ahsoka?
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have Vision season 2, volume 2.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I liked Visions, but I wasn't really that much into anime, and I still aren't. The only anime I really watch is One Piece.
Okay.
Ahsoka. I would have forgiven Ahsoka if they didn't introduce the Fallen Order lightsaber mechanics in the first episode.
Yeah, that's been controversial. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I say Fallen Order mechanics is because, because it's a video game that's targeted towards the same people who watch these movies and shows. They couldn't have it so that lightsabers actually do, like, they can't have it so lightsabers separate limbs. So they just don't.
Okay.
Just if you do this, it just leaves
Right.
like a mark on the armor.
Right. So your point is, with the lightsaber, we've seen people cut down with the lightsaber, and they seem to survive.
Even
they
the Rise of
they come back
Skywalker,
to full health.
Like, we always forget about the Rise of Skywalker. Rey force healed Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced force healing for that one scene,
Okay.
and then a setup and payoff at the end because Kylo and Rey traded life forces, or something. It felt really haphazarded to take out Kylo Ren. Just get rid of the Skywalker.
So your issue with the lightsaber, the battle between Shin and Sabine, when Shin took the lightsaber and impaled Sabine, but she was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like, they could have just had Shin kick her into a pile of boxes or something, and she was knocked out for the rest of the second episode up until she just came back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that seemed
I just felt
injury.
it peculiar that the ending of episode 1 literally ended with Sabine just getting completely shanked by Shin. And then episode 2, she's like in the hospital, like, and Hu Yang is absolutely roasting her. If it weren't for the fact that she's healing from an injury actively, she would have been done on arrival. I mean, Hu Yang's like, in all of the thousands of years I've been teaching, your aptitude of the Force falls short of every Padawan I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, Hu Yang, you have no chill.
Bringing the heat. Well, and we got that in Kenobi too. The Grand Inquisitor, he got the same treatment. He got that gut stab, and then all of a sudden, my favorite clip in that is when he pops up and goes, "Hello."
Right.
Now, that leaves Mando season 3.
Mm-hmm.
I have one grievance, maybe 2, I don't know. If I think of a second one, I'll tell you. But my one grievance, they should have saved the Grogu arc in the Book of Boba Fett for Mando season 3. Like, have the first 2 episodes not have Grogu, and then have a little arc sandwiched in there where we can pick Grogu back up so it feels like that storyline paid off for a bit. Mm-hmm. Or even better, have it at the halfway mark so it feels like it has a lasting consequence.
Okay.
Something a little different, because I feel like if you don't follow the book of Boba Fett, you're not gonna understand season 3. Like if you only watch
Yeah.
if you're a new Star Wars fan and the only Star Wars you've watched is The Mandalorian, then you go jump from season 2 to season 3. Grogu's back, and Pelimoto lost a tooth for funsies.
Yeah.
Mando's got like a new armor, and now he's an apostate because he took off his helmet and he trained for the dark saber, which he
Yes.
now has back. But he got expelled from Hogwarts. I mean, the Mandalorian clan. Correct me. Yeah.
Yeah, right. All that.
Here's what I'm thinking. I'm
Yeah.
thinking I hope Pablo Hidalgo is watching this, because it sounds like Keith has a seat waiting for him on the story group to help
Yeah.
work out some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
Right. So
here's my thinking.
okay, but hold on. So all that information that you just gave us was in the Book of Boba Fett, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if you did not see the Book of Boba Fett, you go from season finale of season 2, where Grogu goes to Luke to train, to season 3, episode 1, when Grogu's back with Din Djarin.
Yeah,
What happened?
It's kind of din jarring.
Right. Okay. All right.
And my only other grievance with the show,
Yes.
the Darksaber's rules, they just really need to be fleshed out. Like in the Clone Wars, Darth Maul challenged Pre Vizsla to a fight for the saber, but then Obi-Wan Kenobi defeated Maul, but Maul didn't die. They had another fight, and then Obi-Wan did defeat him. But Maul still had the saber, but then Sabine picked up the saber and trained with it and then gave it to Bo-Katan.
Yep.
And while that was happening, Obi-Wan perished, and then it somehow slipped out of Bo-Katan's hands. And
Well, she gave it to Gideon.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It slipped
okay.
out of Bo-Katan's hands
Okay.
into Moff Gideon's,
Okay.
and then from Moff Gideon's hands, it went to Din Djarin.
Yep.
And then he gave it to Bo-Katan on the technicality because he got defeated by the spider monster I built. And then Bo-Katan defeated the spider monster. The issue is, I feel like the rules should just be, you have to actively challenge a person for the Darksaber to win it. Because then when Obi-Wan beats Maul, there's no technicality there. He shouldn't be able to have the Darksaber because he never explicitly challenged Maul, or vice versa, which would mean that Mando should challenge Bo-Katan. But also Paz Vizsla challenged Mando and lost, I think.
Yeah, he did.
But
yeah, there needs to be a call out, is what I'm hearing. It can't be just I ran into a dude on the street and we fought and I beat him. He needs to go, hey, I'm taking that from you. It's going to be mine.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels kind of like going into McDonald's and saying, hey, I got a small fry. If I can throw all these fries into the fryer from 50 feet back, I want a large fry when I get out of here. Like, it just doesn't work. You can't do that.
Okay.
You don't throw French fries at somebody and say, give me your money.
Right. Well,
I beat you
with
French fries. Give me your money.
You're talking about your grievances. So is there anything that you like about what you saw this year?
Here's what I really liked.
Okay, here we go.
Bo-Katan having a nice fleshed out character arc, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We felt how upset she was about what happened to Moff Gideon. She got that chance to start over. And you know what else I liked? How Moff Gideon was absolutely ruthless. Like, he came out with this Beskar armor, took out Paz Vizsla, captured Mando, and then is just like, I have an army of clones of myself, It's over for you. You know what else I like? IG-11 coming back.
Yes,
But
big fan of that.
IG-11 turned into IG-12 when they sat Grogu in him, and then back to IG-11 once he was fully repaired. He should have been IG-13. But, yeah, I like that too. You know what else I like? Mando's Darksaber arc. I feel like it's kind of fitting that the Darksaber is heavy to him and that he can't wield it because he wasn't supposed to in the first place. Mando never wanted the Darksaber.
Correct.
He has it because of a technicality. Bo-Katan refused to take it because she knew what would happen if she did. That's how Mandalore got divided the last time. So Din decided, I'm just gonna get rid of this thing. I don't want it. That's why it was so heavy to him, because it was a weight he didn't need to bear and didn't want to.
Agree completely.
I'm rambling for a little too long.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You want to add anything you want to add about that, Nick?
I mean, Keith nailed it. His insights are perfect. I think it's interesting, especially talking about that last bit, the Darksaber arc with Mando, because you're right. It was a burden he didn't want, but it was also one that he realized quickly he had to be the steward of until he could figure out how to dispose of it properly or pass it on properly. He wasn't willing to just give it over. He had to make it something that he, shepherded until it was the time for it to move on from him. But it's so interesting because we see, and this came up certainly during those episodes when it was heavy to him, we see Sabine in Rebels when she trains with the Darksaber, and she has struggles and she learns with Kanan saber combat and that kind of stuff, but she doesn't experience that same heaviness. Like, she wants to lead, she wants to help her people, and so the motivation is different, which I think is so fascinating to have. It's very Arthurian legend with Excalibur and the sword choosing and that kind of thing, to have a character who is a leader but wouldn't choose to be the leader. We see similar versions of that in other things. And Keith, you're not old enough for this, but in Game of Thrones we get that with Jon Snow. We get he's the one that should be the king, and he says, I don't want to, and Varys says to him, that's why it should be you, because there's a different respect. It's not power mad, it's not hungry for control, there's respect there. And Mando goes through that in his own way, while all he's also trying to do is deal with this new emotional compromise he's carrying inside of him, which is the child and the feelings and affections he's got for him too. So I love that insight, and that's really, really cool that you noticed something like that.
For a nerdy reference, think of it like Mjolnir. Mjolnir picks who's worthy.
That's right.
And those are the only people who can lift it. I'm not saying the Darksaber is a sentient weapon forged by dwarves that, is mythical, but the Darksaber, it's a trust kind of thing. If you don't want the Darksaber, if you actively try to get rid of the Darksaber, it's heavier to move. Mando literally cuts his own leg with this Darksaber.
Yep.
Which surprised me. I mean, Bacta tanks do exist, and so does Bacta spray. Spray form of that. They just took Bacta tank water, put it in a bottle, and said, now 500 credits.
That's right. The point is that he didn't know how to use it. It was a burden for him. To wield it and to swing it around, and that's why he accidentally cut himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, want to talk about 2024?
All right. What are you guys looking forward to in 2024?
Well, I know that we have been told, or there's been some breaking news just in the last couple of days, that it looks like Skeleton Crew is confirmed for 2024. It also looks like the Acolyte is confirmed for 2024. I think there was a news story today, and of course this has not come out of Disney's mouth, but it's come from some pretty reliable sources. It looks like Andor season 2 may be pushed to 2025. We also got rumor that it's possible that the Rey movie may start filming in April, which is also super exciting. But of the things that seem the most likely for this next year, Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, it's hard for me to pick which one I'm most excited for, simply because Acolyte sounds amazing. I love the idea of the concept. I am not familiar enough with High Republic to be dialed into exactly what this is. I know it's going to be the end of the High Republic and that kind of thing. But I'm here for the concept. I love the idea of kind of a thriller mystery show at the end of this time period. And Skeleton Crew, I mean, just from the descriptions, it sounds like Goonies, E.T., kids lost in space. I have a pretty strong suspicion that it's going to be tied into the pirate that got away from Mando in season 3. I think he's coming back. Maybe not Salad the Hutt, as I like to call him, but the Nikto pirate that got away
Yeah, I can't remember
in his
his name.
ship in the chase.
Yeah.
Vane.
Yeah.
Vane, that's it. Yeah. I think he's going to show back up as part of, somebody who's antagonizing or chasing these children and a part of this. And Jude Law's a cool actor, so I'm excited to see what they do with him. I guess if I'm picking Skeleton Crew. That's my answer.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think I'm very excited for Skeleton Crew because Skeleton Crew, I like Stranger Things. So that's like a bunch of kids who got together to solve a mystery.
Have some wacky adventures.
And I also like Scooby-Doo.
See? Well, that's why you liked Mando season 3
the
because
kid-friendly Stranger Things,
Yeah.
So
I thought of that. Never put Scooby-Doo
because Christopher Lloyd in Mando season 3 was basically a Scooby-Doo villain, and I would have gotten away with it too.
Yeah,
if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
You're right.
You know what's funny?
Yeah.
Lizzo doesn't even have a name in the canon. She just goes by the Duchess. So is it Duchess Lizzo?
It's a pretty legit name.
Well, I want to. Are you done?
And Captain Bombardier.
Yes, Bombardier. Yeah, right. Jack Black.
Should have just called him Captain Bowser.
Yeah, that'd work too.
Anything you want to say about next year?
Nah, just Skeleton Crew sounds fun, but we haven't gotten much. Whereas the Acolyte is built off the High Republic, but just sheerly from the aspect of a mystery, I think I'm excited for Skeleton Crew more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something doesn't seem right to me, Nick. All right, let me explain. All right. So there's this press release that was going around from overseas that listed just the 2 series, Skeleton Crew and The Acolyte, which I find hard to believe that Star Wars is only going to release 2 series in 2024. Right. I don't know if I buy that.
It's better than having 20 years of dead air.
Because the problem is, besides the strike, we know the strike pushed things back, so sure. I can understand that. But if you look at what Marvel is releasing next year, I honestly don't know what they're releasing outside of Deadpool. That's just one film for the entire year. And we don't even know what they have coming up on Disney Plus next year. So it seems very light of content in 2024, which I don't think is going to bode well for Disney
GTA
Plus.
6.
What's that?
Grand Theft Auto. So there's this meme going around.
Video game.
There's this meme going around
What's that to do with Star Wars?
No. So there's this meme going around I'm gonna be a grown adult with children, a mortgage, and a Ferrari by the time GTA 6 comes out. Because the joke is that GTA 5 came out in the 2000s, and there hasn't been a new one since.
Gotcha.
They just came out with a new trailer. I really don't feel like watching it, frankly, but I'd like to preserve my youth. But
I don't think it's for you, Keith. I'm telling you right now.
But it's out.
Yeah,
and I think to your point as well.
15 years.
Yeah, I think to your point as well, Kerwin. I think I would be surprised if we don't get something animation also in 2024.
Yeah,
whether that's a later in the year Bad Batch season 3. We know there's a Tale of the Jedi season 2 that's being worked on. And those things were affected by the strikes differently. The animation, everybody stopped working, but we don't know necessarily at what stage Skeleton Crew or Acolyte were in when they shut down. They were probably in post-production, so that makes sense. But we know it's going to delay the movies. We know it delayed Andor, and that's probably a part of why that's going to get pushed to 25. But I also don't put it past our friends at Star Wars and Lucasfilm to throw some surprises at us either. So we never know what's going to happen.
Right. Okay.
I just had an idea. So you know the Arrowverse, right? The Arrowverse had like 6 different shows running at a time. At one point, we had Arrow, we had Supergirl, we had Black Lightning, we had Flash, we had Legends of Tomorrow, and we had Batwoman, all at the same time. They should do something like that with Star Wars. Like, take your shows like Mando, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, and have them run back to back on nights. We know Disney Plus is capable of doing live streams because I think they live streamed Taylor Swift's concert or something. Because,
Right.
Disney owns ABC now.
Yes.
I think it's safe to assume that anything is owned by Disney by now.
Just about, just as much. Yeah.
I'm sure Disney's
Just about, yeah.
I'm sure Disney's in the process of acquiring Apple.
No. Well, I don't think so. But,
Samsung will be next.
right.
And then Sony. And then all of the world.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well,
all they gotta do is conquer the military. Just throw $3 billion at them and be like, we've got more where that came from.
Yeah, well, I hope there's more. Right. That's a great point to end. Yeah. I hope there is more where that came from, because it just seems very light on content. And that's on both sides. I can understand if maybe Star Wars had more content than Marvel, or Marvel had more than the other, but it seems like both of them, they're not bringing much to the table next year, which that's not going to be, I don't think subscribers are going to go for that.
I'd like to point to phases 1, 2, and 3 of Marvel. Phase 1 had like 6 films. It had the first 2 Iron Man films, Thor, Captain America, and the Avengers, and also the Incredible Hulk. So that's 6. And then phase 2 had like Ant-Man, Guardians, Age of Ultron, and stuff. And then moving on, phase 3, we had Guardians 2, Endgame, and capped off with Far From Home. And then phase 4 hit us with an absolute combo. We had WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Loki, What If, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk.
Too much?
Yeah, that's quite a lot. Okay. And those are just shows. Then we had Eternals, Shang-Chi, No Way Home. We just got the Marvels. Like, we had a whole lot going on.
Okay. So it's okay if Marvel takes a break and just releases one movie?
I think it's all right if Marvel slows down. And then this year we also had Quantumania, Guardians 3, Secret Invasion.
Understood. Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
Now, as for Star Wars, Star Wars has been really on and off. Like, for a franchise that started in 1977, I understand that. Because, there was a gap between 83 and 99. And then there was another pause after Disney acquired Lucasfilm, and then came out with more movies. I know there were shows in between some of these pauses and books as well, but it was really stop and start. Like, once you got a trilogy, Star Wars stopped up until now, because now we have lots of other shows and movies to fill us over. But Star Wars, they haven't really released much. Season 7 already was not. Like, it wasn't even necessary. But
Season 7 of the Clone Wars?
Yeah, Season 7 of the Clone Wars wasn't necessary. But they did it. And they blew it out of the park phenomenally. The story arc was amazing in all 3 arcs. Especially the Siege of Mandalore one. I actually liked it.
Well, we do know one thing that's coming up in 2024, Nick.
Echo!
Well, I wasn't talking about that, but... I just saw something drop yesterday. If you could please confirm. No, stay with me. Podathan.
Yes, indeed. Podathan. Podathan is back. Yes. We put Podathan on hold this year during the strikes. The timing was not right. We wanted to support all of our friends who were in the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA. They've been so gracious to us to be able to be on so many of our shows and be guests. And we've really gotten to be good friends with a lot of these people. And it was important to us, certainly, that they, get what they were owed and got, fair contracts. And I'm so excited that they are now able to claim that and able to get back to working on things. But as a result, it put Podathan on hold for this year. And so we continue to have conversations internally to figure out, when do we think we wanted to get back into it. And just by one of the beautiful miracles of the calendar, we like to do Podathan on a Saturday. It feels like the best day. We'll a certain little Star Wars day that we like to call May the 4th is a Saturday this year. So we are doing Podathan on May the 4th. We dropped a little video yesterday, kind of a tease to let everybody know. We are going to be doing it once again to support the Make-A-Wish Foundation. We love supporting Make-A-Wish. Like you mentioned in the top of the show, this will be the 4th year that we've done Podathan, and we have raised upwards of between $30,000 and $40,000 over these last few years, thanks to the amazing support of the Star Wars community, amazing guests, amazing content creators who come together to work with us to put on shows. You guys have been a part of that with us, and we are excited to do that again this year on May the 4th. Lots of exciting news will be forthcoming through the spring as we lead up to that, but we can't wait. I'm so excited to start planning and getting back into that mode.
Yeah,
we'll bring out the sparkling lemonade from Wegmans. This calls for a celebration.
That's awesome.
That's right.
Nick. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Can't wait for that.
So, and guess what else?
Yes.
2024, Stranger Things' final season comes out.
I hope so.
I have been sitting on the ending of season 4 since 2022, literally waiting to see what happened to Eddie Munson. They did him so dirty. They did him so remarkably dirty.
No spoilers, please. No spoilers.
Oh, yeah. By the way, guess what happens to Steve in the 5th episode?
I don't want to hear it. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Nick, this has been,
yes, sir.
Again, my pleasure, our pleasure having you on this podcast. Where can people find you?
I am still one of the few people that are foolish enough to be hanging out on Twitter. It is a bit of a dumpster fire, but I've tried out some of the other ones. Sometimes it seems like people are still on Twitter. So
we're still there.
I'm doing the best I can. You can find me on Twitter at WhillsPod. Honestly, the easiest way to find anything that I do, that Pete does, that Chris and Pete and I do together is you can go to theSSWnetwork.com. It's kind of our one-stop shop for everything we do, both content-wise, merchandise, social media, all the places we hang out. Or if you're searching just in your podcatcher, however you get your podcast, you can search for Around the Galaxy and check us out.
All right. Yeah. Where can people find us, Keith? Okay, everywhere.
You can find us wherever you get your podcast.
Yes.
Socials are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fellows and Galaxy. Website, fellowsandgalaxy.com. Please donate to our Patreon page, patreon.com/FellowsandGalaxy.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop asking you that question now because I think you've just gotten tired of telling people where they could.
Please check out our merch store, feathersandgalaxy.myspreadsub.com. Buy some merch. We have mugs for your hot cocoa and sweaters to keep you warm.
You'll find us somewhere, anywhere. Okay. So Nick.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We should just put an end card at the end that says, "Here's everything."
Right here we are. Okay, that's fine.
Obscure hand gesture.
Before you go, Nick.
Yes, sir.
I know you have a tradition, on your program where you give a toast.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that we do the same because we have you as our guest, our honored guest.
Well,
we want to raise a glass to you. Okay.
Awesome.
So, Keith.
This is lemonade, by the way.
Well, this is how it works, Keith. You wait until the person gives the toast.
No.
And then you take a sip.
No.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to just say
plastic champagne glasses.
It's okay. It's okay. All right.
The definition.
Did you say that was lemonade?
Yeah.
You sure?
I'm sure.
All right. You have to check that glass. Keith, you're not driving home tonight, buddy.
Nick, once again, just thank you so much for being such a good friend and a great podcast host. What you're doing is you're spreading love and joy to the community. So keep doing that. Happy holidays to you and your family. And I wish you much success in 2024, good health, wealth, and just
prosperity.
Just continue to create content.
May you live long and prosper.
Thank you so much. Same to you guys.
Prosper. Thank you. May the fourth be with you. Everything else. There we go.
Yeah.
Excelsior.
So thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Okay. As you finish your glass, I haven't even taken a sip yet. Nick, thank you once again.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you, guys.
Nick Mielke.
I didn't have a license before, but I certainly won't have one now.
Okay, host a podcast of the Whills around the galaxy and Force Connect. Thank you so much, everyone. This was truly a
y'all.
pleasure. Happy holidays to you, Nick, once again.
You too.
Thank you all for joining us. Until next time, take care.
And we will see you again. By the way, seriously, this is lemonade.